Hi everyone, this is Jacqueline from She Rises Studios and welcome to Light the Torch ceremony. And today we are honored to shine the spotlight on Nicole van Kuppeveld, author of Feminine Inspired Leadership, Power Redefined, Leadership Reimagined. In a time when the world is crying out for more inclusive, human-centered leadership, Nicole brings us a guidebook grounded in authenticity, adaptability, and purpose. This isn't leadership as usual. This is leadership evolved. Hi, Nicole. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Jacqueline. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm so excited to talk to you about this because this is a very I'd say timely book as new leaders start emerging. What inspired you to write this particular book where it's centered feminine inspired leadership?
Well, I think what inspired me was running into leaders and working for leaders and being a leader of, and seeing that some of the traditional models for leadership are really not embracing some of the feminine qualities, strengths,
Mm,
attributes that are very, very important in this day and age. So I thought this isn't just for new leaders. This is also for leaders who are finding that their style of leadership or their approach really isn't resonating in some traditional workplaces. So it's for men and women.
that's wonderful. And that's true. We grew up or society has structured leadership to always be handed to a male person. The man is has always been our model for leadership, but you are bringing in the feminine part of it, and not just because there are a lot more women that are emerging as leaders, but because, as you mentioned, there are what do you call this, qualities of a woman that we need to bring into leadership. Your title, Power Redefined, Leadership Reimagined. It's so powerful. What does it mean to you personally?
Well, I'll talk about that in just a minute, but I think it's really important to understand that I worked in sectors that were predominantly led by women leaders. The not-for-profit sector has a lot of feminine leaders in it. The health sector, for example, where I worked, has a lot of female leaders in it, largely because of the nursing population. And so I think that this type of leadership was taught to me. If I think back, I mean, I think my dad taught me about this. This is how he led at home in community. And in his job as a general manager of Lafarge Canada, which is a huge global company that they're affiliated with. And I learned a lot of it from a male boss who hired me not just once, but twice. And so I think it's really, really important that we understand that I've worked for some horrible female bosses, very traditional, very steeped in that old kind of patriarchal thing that you talked about, right? The time when, back in the dark ages, when only men, were leading because women were, at home and they weren't working outside of the workplace. So back in those days, and a lot of them, led from a very patriarchal, authoritarian, command and control, type of leadership. And so the kind of leadership that I'm talking about, this power redefined and leadership reimagined, is like we don't have to do it that way anymore. We all, men and women leaders, need to infuse feminine power qualities like collaboration, like intuition, like empathy, like a lot of qualities. And so it's really about infusing that into a leadership style so we don't have that thing off balance, right? Because I think it was pretty off balanced in the past. And so, and leadership reimagined is that we can all lead, regardless of whether we're brand new managers or CEOs of companies. We can all choose an approach that is more inclusive, that is more human centered, that is more working together, learning together, valuing the diversity of the people that come to work for us every day. So this is a type of leadership that I think brave people who are finding that those old ways of working aren't working anymore would really benefit from.
That's very interesting because, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners out there would, be able to relate to the type of bosses that you've had before. What was the turning point or your realization in your own journey that led you to write this book?
Well, um, if I'm being completely transparent and honest, I worked for a woman who was a very powerful woman. She was a narcissist, and she actually talked to us. There were 55 of us that were executives working across the state, as you guys would say, in our health authority. And she insinuated that none of us were really worth our weight in gold, and that really they needed to clone her, like Dolly the sheep, that they needed to have, she needed to have 55 of her. And so she was one of those horrible bosses that I had. And I got really curious, Jacqueline. I'm like, what is going on in this environment where, we have women behaving that way? And I didn't know. I'd been a leadership researcher. I've been studying, I've been a student of research for the last 20 years. I've held executive director positions and, senior leader positions. And so I was really curious of like, what's going on here? So I actually ended up taking some coursework in feminine power, and it gave me the answers and it helped me fill in those gaps and figure out. And I'm like, okay, I get it now. Now I really understand what's happening. And so um, I thought, I can't keep this to myself, right? I got to share this with the world. I mean, I built it into all the leadership development that I had done for myself and with people that were working for me and all the courses I'd taken. Um, I have a master's in leadership and organizational development, but that was the missing piece. And so it kind of pulled it all together. And I'm like, okay, so this is kind of the culmination of my life's work as a leader and as a leadership researcher and as a leadership expert. And I just thought that title would be really fitting. And yeah, so once I was pushed into figuring out what that was going on and I figured it out, I'm like, okay, now I need to write about it.
That's wonderful. And another wonderful thing about this book is that this includes exercises and toolkits. Can you share, not everything, maybe just give us a glimpse of a practical tool that leaders can start applying right away?
Sure. And it's super practical. It's not theoretical. It's like read it and go and do it. So one of the tools that I use, values are very important when we're looking at leaders and organizations, and that's really where people fit or don't fit, right? So um, one of the exercises is a values assessment. And
Mhm.
so that really helps you as an individual leader, and you can do it with your team and figure out what their values are, and you can really use that as a tool and an exercise to be able to ensure that your organizational values and what you're doing in your organizational culture aligns. So that's one.
That's wonderful. And that's that's true. If you understand each other's values, you'd be able to understand each other better. I would think so. And there'll be a lot more smoother. And I think it's very important that leaders take their time in understanding their people, not just imposing what they think, how things needs to be handled. So that's wonderful. That's a very very good toolkit there. Now, how can leaders embrace uncertainty, disruption, and rapid change with resilience and agility, especially if I've been shaped into a leadership where I'd say in the traditional way where, I'm looking at just one track my way. Um, how, if I wanted to start changing, how can I start embracing the uncertainty and the disruption in my leadership role?
Well, I love that question, and and the answer is you have to do it with your team. So you have to build what I call a collaborative learning team. So you can't do it by yourself. You have to learn how to create an environment at work, a culture at work, where you're really leveraging all of that diversity, all those wonderful people that come to the table with great experiences and skills. And then you're going to be able to work at your maximum capacity, and you've got to build in learning in there. So another tool, just to answer your last question, is what we call an after action review tool. So it's just that time that you take to kind of pause after, maybe you're not for profit, you put on this huge fundraising event. And then after the event, you schedule some time to sit down and say, what went well? What didn't go well? What would we do the same? What would we do differently next time? So you're always integrating the learning. And we're not blaming anybody in that exercise. We're just there to say, this was great. But what would we do next time that would make it even greater? And so building in those kinds of reflections, and you can do that at the end of a meeting, you can do that at the end of an event. And so once you can create that environment, Jacqueline, where you have that mentality and you're always learning together, oh my goodness, you become unstoppable. Like because you're all working in synchronicity. One of the other exercises I really like too is a exercise I called your best team. So your listeners and you, I usually ask them, like, think about that time when you were on this team. Maybe you were in college, maybe it was a community event that you were doing. Maybe you're in that job right now where you're working with your best team, where things just flow together and you get incredible things done in seemingly easy ways, and I don't know, you can almost read each other's minds, but I would never advocate for that because communication is one of the chapters in the book. It's a huge key. But you've all been on that best team, like it's just like, oh my god, I loved working with those people. Like, we did such good work together. I didn't just like them as people, but we did really great things together. And then you think about, okay, so what was happening? Why was that team different than this team that you're working on that's like, I wish I could find another job, or I don't want to work here anymore. And all those qualities that we look at in the best team exercise are the things that we need to be able to create in our teams, in our work environments, so that we can all be working every day in our best team.
That's wonderful. That's a wonderful tip. Dissecting what why it worked before and try applying it to see if it will work with this new team now. If there is someone out there listening that is a new aspiring leader, maybe someone who's trying to work her way up the corporate ladder, watching right now, what's the one thing you want them to take away from this conversation?
I want to say that you should buy this book. No, I want to say that if you follow and apply and use the tools in this book, that you will be able to be that kind of leader, that can navigate through uncertainty, through challenge and change, and not just survive, but actually thrive. And you can create an environment where people say, hip, hip, hooray, I get to come to work for Jacqueline today.
Ah, that's wonderful. Awesome. Well, Nicole, thank you so much. Thank you for reminding us that the future of leadership isn't about the titles or the rigid system. It's about impact, connection, and the courage to lead with heart. So, for everyone listening out there, go ahead, grab a copy of Feminine Inspired Leadership. This is now available on Amazon, and step into the leadership journey you were born for. Thanks again, Nicole. Thanks, everyone.